You're listening to the Ranch Stewards Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the stewardship and conservation of grasslands, diverse ecological landscapes, and the salt of the earth individuals who dedicate their lives to this endeavor. And now here's your host, Haley Shipp.
And welcome back to the Ranch Stewards Podcast. So happy to have you with us. And you know what? We have been throwing a whole lot into this channel lately, from recorded webinars to the Ranch Workforce Project. What you're listening to today, it is one of the old school, the OG Ranch Stewards Podcast episodes. And in this episode, we're actually talking about something that is a little OG now, original. You know, it's something that we have talked about before on the podcast, but through a different lens. We are talking virtual fencing, and it was not that long ago that this felt like a very cutting-edge conversation. Something you'd read or hear about and think maybe someday, but that someday showed up really quick. Ranchers across the country have leaned in, and it's gone from, what is that, to how are you using it in a hurry? If you are newer to it, no problem. We're going to talk about the basics, but we're also going to look at this from a different lens today, in that we are looking at it on a Forest Service allotment, a rancher that has that, where previously we've been talking about it on the high plains and kind of flatter country. So a little bit of a different discussion on that front. Before we get into our guests, I do want to mention, if this is something of interest to you, and if you are around north central Montana, the Ranchers Stewardship Alliance does have 2 educational opportunities coming up where you can get up close and personal to the collars, the livestock, the mapping systems, the ranchers that use them, both on May 13th as well as June 24th. And all of those details can be found at ranchstewards.org/events. One of them is part of the Montana Range Day celebration, 50th year anniversary, and Malta gets to be the host this year. All right, with no further ado, here are our guests. We've got Jim Felton with Felton Angus Ranch, as well as Grace Inglee with the Vence Virtual Fencing Company, and I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Grace. I am currently based out of North Texas. I've been here for about 3 years and I love it. Originally a Colorado gal, but I will say that I do love Texas maybe just a little bit more. So I've been working for Vence for about 3 years now. After college, I went to intern for the RAB Ranch, a seed stock operation here in town, and they started using the collars when I was an intern there. And so I kind of got some firsthand experience with it. And after my internship, I decided I wanted to apply and work for Vence. It's been interesting because in college, virtual fencing was a huge topic, a huge discussion. Nothing had really come out at that point. And so I kind of thought, oh, it's probably not really doable. There's a lot that has to happen to make this work. But here I am after college working for a company that does virtual fencing, and it's changed so much, changed the game for a lot of producers, and I love being able to be a part of it. My specific role within Vence, I'm a rancher success specialist. So I get to work one-on-one with a bunch of different ranch accounts and walk them through this process while they're using our collars. I do troubleshooting, answer their questions. We'll go help put collars on, kind of all things within Vence. I'm their go-to gal.
Jim Felton also joining us, a rancher from Montana. Jim, why don't you give us a little bit about your background and Felton Angus, and then we'll get into the collar part of things. But this is your chance to hype up your business a little bit.
Well, I do try to do plenty of that, but yeah, my name is Jim Felton, Felton Angus Ranch. I live in the western part of Montana around Deer Lodge. I got you guys a little dated because we weren't talking virtual fencing in college when I graduated, but that was not even, I don't think, on the radar at that point. But so we basically have some public land grazing and Forest Service, kind of a shared allotment. Fences are non-existent, a lot of elk and no maintenance, and so we were just having some issues with that and trying to keep our cattle contained and not find them 20 miles away, you know. And I'd been reading about this stuff, you know, it was in all the magazines and stuff, and talked about virtual fencing. And actually the head range technician for the Forest Service office out of Phillipsburg, Montana, came to us and asked if we would be interested in trying it. Basically the first allotment to use it in herd her district. And so had a meeting at the ranger station, and we all said, yeah, we'd go for it. And so that's how I got introduced to Vence, was at that meeting, and got the deal put together and put some collars on.
You want healthy pastures, healthy cattle, and healthy bottom lines. But high fencing and labor costs, lack of time, and rugged, isolated pastures stand in your way. That's where Vence comes in. Our simple plan: collar your cattle. Set endless virtual fences anytime, anywhere, and watch your herd rotate pastures effortlessly. Visit VenceFence.com today to get started. Vence, grazing reimagined.
So, Grace, why don't you give us that 10,000 foot, just, brief overview of how virtual fencing as a technology comes together?
Yeah, awesome. So if you think about it, it's very similar to a dog collar. You get a sound and then you get the shock stimulus as well. So it works very similar. It's just obviously sized and meant for cattle. So basically, as we all know, virtual fencing is a livestock management system for cattle. So you can control cattle movement, you can manage your grazing, you can create virtual fences to dictate their grazing behavior, see, hey, where have they gone? Where do I need them to go? What parts of the pastures are they utilizing the most? And then you can also monitor their location and movement too. So you kind of get all of those details into one product, which is really cool. Again, you can see where they've grazed, their location. You can turn on different notifications as to, hey, who's outside the fence, who hasn't moved and how long. So it kind of helps from another standpoint of just, you still have to go out and check your cows, but it's meant to be an extension of your arm. It's not meant to replace your job, just a grazing assistant, a grazing tool to help better your land and just kind of get to know the behaviors of your cattle better too. But that's from an extremely bird's eye view, that's kind of what we're looking at there. Very similar to a dog collar again.
Kind of walk us through the towers and the collars and kind of over here in Northeast Montana, I'm sure our tower to collar ratio is quite different than what Jim is talking about on a forest allotment.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Vence, you have to buy, every cow gets a collar. Every cow that is going to be grazed together has to wear a collar. We don't collar calves, but every mama will get a collar, and then you will get a base station too. So the base stations just depend on your topography. One base station can cover, again, topography dependent, on anywhere from 5 to 10,000 acres. So what we do is, before you sign up for Vence and want to try these collars, we like to do a coverage map analysis. And that's just looking at your topography. Where do you need coverage? How many towers is it going to take to get that coverage? So again, if you're dealing with a lot of valleys or mountains and things like that, that'll depend on how you want to graze them and where you're going to graze them and what that looks like. But those collars are going to connect with the base stations, and that's how they communicate. So you will place your base station in an area that has cell service. It only needs 1 bar of cell service, and you'll plant it in the ground there, and then your collars can, quote, go off the grid and graze, because you can load those assignments in those collars. And as long as your base station is within coverage, you're good to go. You can get I don't think there's a limit on how many collars you can have per base station. They are meant to hold a ton. And so again, I have several producers who take 6 or 7 base stations, and some that have 1 or 2. I do also have producers that like to mount them on trailers and move them around as they graze throughout their lease land and things like that. So that's kind of where you can take it and be a little bit creative with your coverage and move things around and make it really work for you.
Jim, tell me about the first day that you guys went out there and decided today's the day we're collaring cattle. We're going to turn them loose. I mean, were you just tied to your cell phone the whole time after that, watching them, or?
Actually, I'll be honest with you. I basically turned it over to my hired man. He put it on his phone. My sister watched. I seen it on their phones and computers and things of that nature. But yeah, when we decided to put them on, well, we were all at the shoot, and it was kind of funny because the cattle didn't know what the heck we just put on them, and so they would actually come out of the chute and start bucking around. We're like, what the heck, and trying to get these things off. After about 5-10 seconds of that, then they realized not a big deal, and they kind of quit, and then then they went back to grazing and stuff. But it was pretty interesting to see that first interaction with the collar on that cow. And I never had cattle come out and do that. And but once they got used to it, I think we weren't the first people on the allotment to put them on, so we kind of got some insight from some of the other guys, like, don't put them on too tight, but don't just drape them on, because the first guy that did it, they came bucking out of the chute, and by the time they got done bucking, they already had the collar off, and it was laying in the dirt, and had to run them back through and do it again and snug it up a little bit. So I didn't want to do that, but I didn't want to choke them either. So the first few, you're kind of, I don't know, putting a little gap in there, you slide your kind of your fingers under that chain to say, well, we thought we had it down, and we did. We didn't lose any from that, but there was a few this fall, out grazing. They fleshed up a little bit. I kind of wish that I maybe not quite as snug. I mean, it didn't hurt them, but could have gave them another link or so on the snap, but yeah, it's pretty interesting to see. Make sure if you do it, you got a neck extender on your chute. It really helps. We had an old chute that was a manual that we just had there. And we're like, well, let's just use it. And, we're used to the hydraulics with the neck extenders to hold the head and then drape this around. We had that in a preview with the governor, but where we really did it was out in the hills at a kind of a cobbled up corral with an old Thorson chute, and just watch your face and everything like that when you're trying to wrap that around, because they'll throw their head pretty good. And I think, just be careful. And once you figured it out, it went on pretty slick.
You better hope your Montana State Fund rep is not listening to this interview.
Yeah, you might want to cut that out.
Yeah. But yeah,
I was just going to tell you, I got a trailer full of bulls back here that are bouncing around. So if I look like I'm not Mr. Bobblehead, so my apologies on that.
So, Jim, did you lose any ever from cows scratching on trees and getting one pulled off and leaving one behind like that?
Yeah, we found some on a fence post. Hired man found one under a tree. But that's the joy of it, because it's got GPS locator, so you can find all these things. That's my biggest thing about the whole deal, was just the GPS location of the cattle. Hired man, he got all the cattle off the allotment by himself. I never went and helped him. One guy, boom. And he said, if I didn't look at that, I'd have rode past 20 head in a bunch of timber that I wouldn't ever known was there. If you can get a guy in there to get the whole allotment gathered by himself, that's pretty cool. Usually it would take us, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks with about 5-6 riders on horses, and cattle would jump in the brush or whatever, and it's kind of got to bird dog them out of there, so you're gonna miss some. I mean, you're never gonna get a clean sweep through there the first time, but if you know where the cows are, they can't really get away from you. And I think you could probably draw the lines on your computer and just suck them in too. We didn't do that because he wanted to go riding. So, but I think, and I mean, she can answer for that, Grace can, but I mean, start drawing them lines in on your computer, and I think it would just suck that. No, I mean, basically just lead them right to the gate. Actually, I heard, maybe it was you that was talking about the guy at Helmville that gathered the whole permit by himself by just pulling the lines in, when normally had 8 or 10 riders out there.
Yes.
The cowboy guys ain't going to like that, because that's taking a job away from them, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So with our product, we have 3 different vences that you can use. You have your typical inclusion, like you're keeping them in an area. You have an exclusion vents, you're trying to keep them out of something. I have actually an account in Idaho that is trying to keep them out of certain water sources. And so they can keep them in their pasture, keep them out of important water sources. But then, just like he said, there's a movement vents, and that movement vents goes at a grazing pace and will kind of catch them as they graze. So you can push them up into certain corners of the pasture, push them into their corrals and catch them there. That has been a game changer for a lot of producers and really saved a lot of time on gathering.
So Grace, how does that work? I know when you're asking more of the collar performance-wise, it does dig into the battery a bit more too. So talk about the battery component of the Vence collar and how you manage that.
Yeah, so our batteries last anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And so our vent specifically is meant for a big range grazing. We're not built to do anything too tight, too intense grazing. The more those cows interact with the virtual fences and receive instructions and things like that, the more battery life it's going to take. So this is where it's really ideal for operations like this, because they're out on large places and they can fully use that 6 to 9 months, if not longer. And so the tighter and more intensively you're going to graze, the more battery life you'll use. Now, I do have certain accounts that do intensively graze and they're willing to change batteries more often. So that also depends on the producer and how many times they're going to be able to bring them in throughout the course of that grazing season. And I also have ones that don't bring them in at all until they take the collars off. So, and you're able to kind of customize your grazing plans with that too, and kind of figure out, okay, what does that availability look like? But typically our batteries last anywhere from 6 to 9 months.
So Leo Barthelmess, one of the board members of the Ranchers Stewardship Alliance, he uses the Vence collars, and he uses his in a fairly heavy rotational graze system. So it is harder on the battery life. So what he'll do is just push back the front line and then go back with the side by side and bump everybody up to that, so that he's not just moving them with the collar, but he's assisting it, but able
Yes.
to ease up on the battery some. Grace, let's talk about cost. What do ranchers invest in this?
Yes. You only have to buy, so I'll start with this. You buy the base station. The base station runs anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000. That's going to be the most expensive piece, the part that you're really going to invest in. Then you have the collar subscription. So again, it's run on a subscription basis. So you're paying $40 per cow per year. And that includes the collars, the Rancher Success Help, the platform, any replacement items you need to be sent to you. And then the batteries are $10 a piece. So really you're looking at $50 a cow a year. And then on top of your base station purchase. And so to me, that's a great pricing point for producers. If you look at fencing today and how much that costs, you're saving a lot of time, energy, and money switching to a virtual system. But that is where our things are priced right now. And again, because it's a subscription basis, you do get replacements sent to you. All of those replacements are covered in that yearly fee.
And to put that fencing price into perspective, I just talked to my fencer this morning because I've got 2 miles is all that's getting redone. And to take out and rebuild 2 miles of fence is $28,000. So the cost of everything is high right now. So it kind of takes that into, definitely puts apples to apples when you look at those dollars spent on a new fence.
It wasn't many years ago you could get fence put in for $1 a foot, and them days are long gone. So yeah, it's
Expensive.
way cheaper than building new fence. And Forest Service, they'll give you the supplies, but they don't do any labor, and we're all short of labor. And you look at these things, you're like, they haven't been fixed in 30 years. I mean, even if I had the time, where do you start? And let alone do you even want to do it?
Montana. We are proud to say it's where we live and where we work. The vibe is different here. We are friendly, caring, hardworking, resilient, and resourceful. No one else covers Montana or cares for Montana more than Stockman Bank. To us, Montana isn't just a place. It's the only place we do business. That's why we are Montana's brand of banking.
What are you hearing from the ranchers that you work with as far as the feedback that you're getting, or maybe the most frequently asked questions? Kind of I'm trying to anticipate what a listener listening to this podcast might be thinking. Oh, I wish they'd ask this. What are some of the things that you get from the ranchers that you work with?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things. I think the top comments that I get is got to do a lot with location. They love seeing their location, and they're always saying, well, how accurate is it? It updates every 30 minutes. And so you're getting a pretty accurate representation of their location. There's also a setting that we can choose to have them check in more frequently as well. And so people are always like, yeah, it shows its location, but like, is it like a day ago location? Like, no, it's every 30 minutes. When it's in good coverage, you are getting an accurate location. And then a lot of them are also asking about an app. We just released an app, and so we do have one. show you right now, because it's new, it's view only. And so we're currently, pushing updates and getting that going to create an even easier to use software where you'll be able to have more functions in the app. But one thing that's really cool about the app, we now have a 3D map, which is incredibly helpful. It's easier to see topography, and you can use that as you work on your computer to really figure out the best place to place those virtual boundaries. And it also gives you your location in relation to your cows too. So if you're horseback, you can pull out your phone and you know exactly where to go. And so, sounds like they use that, and it was extremely productive and helpful for them. Another really, and I never even thought about this, but another really unique comment I get from producers is Vence has allowed me to have more personal time, more family time. There's fathers being able to go to their sons' baseball games, go to their grandkids' sporting events, school events, because they have this at their fingertips. Again, it doesn't replace their job by any means. They're still going out, checking cows, doing their job, but it's an extension that allows them to have more family time and be able to check cows from their couch in the morning while they're having coffee and say, hey, okay, I know right where they are. I don't have to leave at 3 a.m. to go and start finding things and doing all that. It just gives them a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom, and a peace of mind in a way, because they're able to see where things are at. Those are the main kind of questions I get. A lot of them also ask, well, how long did it take to learn the software? Are you just going to turn me loose on it? No, that is my job. I'm here to walk you through every step of the process. You are with someone who will teach you the whole thing. And there's a little bit of a learning curve with the system, but that's what we're here for. And so it's nothing to be intimidated about. I can see a lot of producers do tell me when I first meet them, hey, this is really intimidating. I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, hey, that's okay. Got you covered. We'll figure it out. But those are probably the top questions and comments that I get from producers.
Jim, was this a hard sell for anyone in your operation? I know you're kind of always sort of looking for the next technology and a little bit more cutting edge than some. Was it just this is what we're doing, folks, or?
Well, the first mistake I love my dad dearly. He's 82 years old, but I took him to the Forest Service meeting with me, and he's, old school, about as old as school as you can get. He's like, oh God, and kind of was not on board at first. And so I just kind of at the meeting made the executive decision that we were on board, and he gave me a dirty look, but he didn't fire me. So I guess we're all right. But it wasn't a hard sell for, the younger crowd for sure. We're all got our phones and computers. And like you said, we're always, at least I am, trying to make my life a little easier, because I'm going every which way, from softball games to delivering bulls and stuff like that. And I just got to be a way to make, if nothing else, see your cows out there and count them and know where they're at. Kind of a ease of mind, I guess.
Is there anything new on the forefront? You said the app is going to be something that's new for Vence. Anything else that you all are working on or are getting excited about?
I mean, we're constantly working to have, a stronger battery life, better firmware, even easier to use software and platforms, things like that. So that's kind of where all of our resources are allocated at this time, is just continuing to find ways of like, okay, how can we get even more use out of our battery life? What does that look like? What is that going to take? How can we improve herd manager based on what feedback we get from producers of like, what do they want to see and how can we make that possible for them? And so we're constantly just delving all of our resources into everything like that. And so it's never a dull moment, lots of exciting things to look forward to. And just, I like it because my position specifically, because I get a lot of feedback from ranchers and I'm able to see it from their point of view, not only because of my experience growing up with cattle and working with these callers while I was an intern, but also every operation is different. They're all using it for different purposes, whether you're keeping them off burn areas or keeping them out of water sources or whatever the case may be. I'm able to take all that and kind of brainstorm, and it teaches me a lot, but then I'm also able to give this feedback and say, hey, what if we created something like this or added this feature to make their lives easier? Because a lot of my producers are dealing with this, things like that. So we're always looking to improve all of those.
Jim, talk to us about getting the governor out at your ranch. How did this happen? What was that like to be able to have the official state crew there?
Well, I think it's probably Grace and her team that lined it up. we just got an email from the company and asked if we would be willing to host the governor on Egg Day, National Egg Day, for Egg Week. I think it was Egg Day he showed up. And I thought, it's always probably a good idea to stay in the good graces of the governor. So uh, it was a no-brainer to me to host it. And I was the only permittee, the permittee there. But yeah, we had a nice showing. We had a nice crowd, I thought. Very astute governor that seemed interested in it. And he's a tech guy anyways. So, you don't design right now technologies and not be a tech guy. So, you knew he was a tech guy. And I kind of think it stuck with him because he went to my daughter's school the other day and she gave him a tour of the FFA greenhouse. And he found out that she was my daughter and said that was one of his favorite stops. It was real interesting. So, we had him and all of his press and, Department of Ag guys, Rocky Mountain Health Foundation was there. I think a couple environmental groups were there. Yeah, we had a nice little deal, I thought, and I would do it any other day as well. So I think it probably brought some awareness there. And I know it's brought some awareness because everybody saw the news clip on the 10 o'clock news and they're like, hey, I saw you. And I probably had 5 or 6 calls on the fencing deal. So people saw it for sure.
So, Jim, on the Forest Service allotments, are the towers owned by the government then, and you all buy your own collars? Is that how it all shakes out?
I believe so. In our situation, we got some funding from a environmental group to get these collars out of Bozeman, and I think they were at the deal. I think the same group that got us the money were with the governor. But yeah, I was through some outside funding to do this experiment, I think, on the collars. If I'm wrong, Grace, tell me because I don't handle the check writing or anything on the operation. So I don't know if we got billed for this, or I guess I haven't really asked that question to my sister. So.
No, you're good. Yeah, you're right. And to kind of build off of his point there's a lot of funding available. So if we have, whenever ranchers are curious about this, like go out and talk to your people, talk to those organizations, because we are slowly getting more and more funding and they're looking for ranchers to fund for this because a lot of organizations have seen that like, hey, this is a great tool. And we want to be able to provide this for you guys. So don't ever hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to Vence, but also reach out to your surrounding groups around you and ask them about funding because there's a lot out there. So I don't ever want producers to think, hey, this is not possible. It might be possible. Chances are it will be. Because it's a big deal. There's a lot of interest. It does a lot of good. So don't ever hesitate to reach out and ask for funding and other opportunities that are out there. So
Ranchers Stewardship Alliance has been able to help to fund 2 different individuals at this point, and actually 3. And now we're trying to figure out if this is the next grant funding we need to go after, is to help folks pay for this if there's a lot of interest in it locally. And so we do have, for folks closer to Malta, coming up 2 different virtual fence learning opportunities. One is called Collars and Coffee, and that's going to be May 13th. And then the next one is on June 24th, I believe, and it's all part of the Montana Range Days tours. And so they can get all of the details on that at ranchstewards.org. So yeah, there definitely is funding for it out there. So Grace, any final thoughts for you before we, I said early on, this is more of a straightforward topic now. It used to be abstract. Now it's just kind of more run of the mill. But anything else that you want to bring up before we let you go today?
I don't think so. I think it's just, keep your eyes on the horizon of different things that we're going to be able to push out and improve and things like that. It's technology. So there's always going to be opportunities to grow and to keep pushing for and things to create. So there's some excitement along the way. So keep your eyes open for that. And again, just keep an eye out for funding and ear out for funding. There's so many options. So don't ever feel discouraged that this may not be a good fit for you.
Loved what you told too about having the tower on the trailer. I've never heard of that before, but as somebody who grazes on a lot of leased land, and it's pretty spread out, that's something that can be a deterrent for this sort of thing. But I never realized that. And then folks can collaboratively go together on towers, just like what they're doing on the Forest Service, and
Mhm.
then share towers too. So
Yes.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of options. It's been fun. Producers will send me texts, "Hey, I rigged this up to get it on a trailer," and they get really creative with how they're going to get it to stay on the trailer and move it, and it's all worked great. It's given me more ideas to pass on to other producers too of like, "Hey, try this. This worked for this producer." And so, yeah, it's been great.
And then do they have to have like a generator with them on the trailer? Is that
Nope,
it's
no, so there's batteries that go inside the base station, and those last for years, and so you'll work with, our deployment team. We send a couple guys out, to go help you set up the towers. They'll teach you how to put it together, they'll place it in the right spot, they'll help you connect it, make sure it's all online, and then you're good to go. Batteries are in. As soon as you put batteries in your collars, they're gonna start communicating, and you are off on a great start, so.
Yes, okay. Jim, any other stories to tell? Any last thoughts before we let you go today?
I think that with this company, they got Merck behind them, so it's not a mom and pop. So there's going to be a lot of funding for some cool technology going forward on that deal. I think they're probably, top of the game as then going into the future would be my guess. So been a good experience. Good team.
And we didn't even pay Jim to say that. So thank you so much to Jim, to Grace for joining me today. Again, if you want the details on those educational opportunities, ranchstewards.org/events. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like, to share, and to subscribe to the Ranch Stewards Podcast. We've got it in the audio version. We've got it on YouTube now as well. It really does help us to keep these conversations going and to reach more people, not only across the industry, but we are talking to folks now all over the globe. Over 60 countries have downloads of the Ranch Stewards Podcast. Around here, we're all about ranching, conservation, and rural communities. This episode really touched on all three. So thanks for being part of it. We'll see you next time on the Ranch Stewards Podcast.
You've been listening to the Ranch Stewards Podcast, a project of the Rancher Stewardship Alliance. If you like what you heard, head to ranchstewards.org for added content, or follow the Rancher Stewardship Alliance on Facebook and Instagram.